والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another session of the Essentials. Alhamdulillah, this is our third session now, and we last week began in regards to the etiquettes, the mannerisms, and the behaviors and the rulings of using the bathroom. And we started istinja, the process of cleaning and purifying oneself after one has urinated or defecated. Just some clarification. Through the week, we had a few people who viewed online. Some questions came up, which I thought I would clarify. The first thing is, and this is quite important, last week we mentioned al-istibara. Al-istibara, seeking to become free from the remaining drops of urine. And this is mainly for the males. This is different for different people. What I mean by this is some males will find that they do not require much effort for istibara. Istibara, after they urinated, they do not require much effort to get the remaining drops out. Whilst other males may find that more effort is needed. And hence why last week we mentioned the methods. The methods of getting rid of the remaining drops. We had the tanahnuh, which is the coughing, the internal coughing, as if we were clearing our throat. And we had the mashi, the stepping on the ground, placing a barrier of tissue on the tip of the genital and standing and stepping on the ground. And we also had the squeezing and the shaking. In regards to the shaking and the squeezing, it's very important that one does not become excessive in this. This is to be done lightly, with no harm. No harm should be caused. And these are the methods of istibara. But it varies from male to male. Some males may find that they have to do a bit more effort, whilst others may find that they don't really need to do much. This is a clarification on al-istibara. Second to this, it's very important that we do not become OCD. We do not overthink it. We should complete the methods, and the requirement for us to complete is that we are sure that we are clear of any urine. The effects and the traces of urine have disappeared. There is no traces left. There is nothing dripping out. The example I gave last week was the glass of juice. When we pour it out into the sink, we have the remaining drops, the remainder, the residue. These things, between our bladder and the exit point, we have a tube called the urethra. The tube is how the urine passes out. And after we urinate, there sometimes can be leftover residue from urine left over in that tube. And this is all we are trying to get out. It should not require a lot of effort. And we should not become OCD overthinking about this. After we have completed, some people have asked that after they have exited the bathroom and they are about to perform wudu, or they continue with their day, they feel and a doubt comes to them that further urine drops have come out. This should be avoided. Rather, this is a doubt caused by the shaitan. The shaitan wants to make us feel that we have become impure. And there are particular shayateen that are designated for this. We should ward off this by saying, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, by seeking refuge and protection in Allah from the shaitan. If someone has the tendency to have OCD, then there is a further prescription for them. And this is something that the Messenger ﷺ advised some of the Sahaba ajma'een, radiallahu anhum, that before you finish putting your clothes on, after you have completed istinja, speaking about the front passage, very simply get some water in your hand, drop the water and sprinkle it onto your undergarment. And no more than once, twice, 3 times. Very simply, sprinkling water. And afterwards, if a doubt comes, whether that's during wudu or during salah or whilst you are getting on with your day, if a doubt comes, you leave it and you let it go out from your mind. Because the doubt comes from the shaitan. And we have a principle in the usul al-fiqh, the principles of fiqh, that certainty is not overtaken by doubt. Your doubts does not overtake what you are certain about. And this principle is applied for wudu also. Sometimes we may think dhuhr time we come and we perform wudu. Then asr time comes and we have a doubt. Oh, do I still have wudu? So long as you are sure that you did not go to the bathroom and you are sure that you do not break your wudu, do not let your doubts overtake your certainty. Because doubts are from the shaitan. Your certainty overtakes your doubt, not the other way around. And this is a principle in fiqh. And so this was a clarification on istibara. The final question was about istibara, where it actually came from. Istibara became more prevalent over time. As the human body developed, the human body became weaker as time went along, due to environment, due to diet. The diet of us today is not that like the diet of the Prophet and the Sahaba. They used to eat dry food. They used to have scarcity of water. They did not have much water. So naturally their content in their bladders was less. And naturally it was more cleaner than us nowadays. Our diets nowadays and the juices and the drinks that we have can pollute our insides very much. That's why our bladders and bodies are different to those of before. And second to that, many prominent scholars of the past mentioned about istibara. The likes of Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, rahimahullah, and Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawzi, rahimahullah, and also the Sharih of Sahih Muslim, Imam al-Nawawi, rahimahullah, who did the Sharh of Sahih Muslim. When he came to the hadith about the istinja, he commented on this about al-istibara. So al-istibara is something definitely prescribed upon us. Imam al-Suyuti in his Sharh of Sunan al-Nasa'i on the Tahara also comments about istibara. So istibara should be attempted and should be something done by us, but not to the excessive level. We should avoid any OCD or excessiveness. And inshallah, that was just a clarification of some points from last week and some questions that we received through the week. Moving on, after the topic of istinja and the bathroom etiquettes, we have the topic of ghusl. Ghusl literally means the ritual major bath. The ritual major bath. Removing major impurity, major hadath from our bodies. When a Muslim falls into the state of hadath, in the state of need of major impurity, then one requires ghusl to get rid of that impurity. The word ghusl, ghain with a fatha, with a zabr, it means to wash. Literally, the action of washing is called ghusl. But ghusl is the name for the ritual bath. When is ghusl required? Ghusl is required when seminal fluid, what is referred to semen or sperm or thick fluid, in the fiqh it is called mani, and in the Quran it's called mani as well in Surah Qiyamah. Alam yakun nutfatan min maniyyin yumna. This seminal thick fluid, when it exits from our body, then ghusl is required upon us. This is the first thing. Secondly, during relations between a husband and a wife, even if there is no ejaculation, if there is nothing exiting from fluids, just entering from the male, entering the female alone necessitates ghusl upon the man and the woman also. even if nothing comes out. The entering alone, the tip of the genital meeting the other genital, from the male to the female, necessitates ghusl upon both partners. The next thing that requires ghusl is if anybody has ihtilam. Ihtilam is what is known as a wet dream. And usually people, especially the elder generation, nowadays we don't take responsibility to check on our children, especially our sons. When they reach the age of maturity, majority of them have an ihtilam. And after this, ghusl is required upon them. Any salah performed after this is not valid if they have not performed the ghusl. And this is something that we have to teach our children as well and be aware of. And we can spot the signs when our children reach that age of puberty, of maturity. And so it's a responsibility upon us, especially with our sons. It's also possible for females, but it's less likely. But definitely for the males, our sons from our children. The Messenger ﷺ, for many reverts, for many people who entered Islam, he instructed them to perform ghusl. However, many scholars have said this was not done for every single person. So, the ruling on someone entering Islam and performing ghusl is a recommendation. It's mustahab. It's recommended for the person who enters Islam that you instruct them to perform ghusl. You teach them how to perform ghusl and you instruct them upon that. For a woman, every month they have their monthly cycle, the menstruation, the hayd. At the end of the hayd, when it becomes apparent that the hayd has finished, the menstruation, the cycle has finished, ghusl is fard upon them, and no salah or act of worship is accepted without it completed. And this is something that we have to teach our daughters and the women folk in our families, as elders, as people responsible for our families. We're not just responsible in the dunya aspects, running the family, providing for the family, we are also responsible in the dini aspects also. A leader of the family is not just one that leads in the dunya aspects, but also in the deen aspects. Ghusl is highly recommended for someone who has passed away, for the dead. We perform ghusl, it's a fard kifayah, a communal fard. If a certain amount of people do it, 1 or 2 or 3 people do it, then it suffices for everybody, that the body is washed. Except the body of someone who has died fighting in the way of Allah. These bodies are not washed, they are regarded as pure. And this is the virtue of the person who dies fighting in the jihad of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And finally, when a woman gives birth to her child, usually after giving birth to the child, the woman experiences postnatal bleeding. For a number of days, up to 40 days, bleeding continues. Sometimes it finishes early, and the signs of it finishing are prevalent. Nevertheless, whenever it finishes, the ghusl is obligatory upon the woman and should be completed before she continues with the acts of worship. And these are when ghusl is necessary upon us, obligatory upon us. When is ghusl sunnah or recommended upon us? The day of Jum'ah. Before going to the Jum'ah prayer, it's sunnah upon us to perform ghusl. The 2 days of Eid, the Eidain, before going to the Eid prayer to perform ghusl is recommended upon us. Before putting the ihram on for Umrah and Hajj, we should perform ghusl, and this is recommended and sunnah upon us. And this is when ghusl is sunnah upon us and recommended upon us. Finally, to finish off, a popular question that is asked: if I perform ghusl, and inshallah in the next week we will be going through the method of the ghusl in detail. If I perform ghusl, after I finish, do I need to do wudu after that? The answer is no. If you have done ghusl with this correct method, you are already in the state of wudu. Another question is, if I do a normal shower, and in the shower, even if I'm not clothed, If I perform wudu in the shower, is my wudu valid? The answer is yes, your wudu is valid. And this is possible to do so when one performs ghusl or when one showers. Inshallah ta'ala, we will conclude today to keep it short. The previous lesson was quite long, so to keep it easy for the people, inshallah, we will keep today's session short. Inshallah, next week we have an important session about how to perform ghusl and common mistakes and common things that people forget or neglect in ghusl. Inshallah, all this will be discussed next week. Jazakumullah khairan. Any questions, inshallah, before we conclude? Any questions on the live stream? Comments? Yeah, naam. Mhm. Say that again, sorry. Yes. Okay. No, so the method of ghusl is the same. In regards to your two scenarios, the question was, is there any difference between ghusl after major impurity and ghusl on the day of Jumu'ah? The ghusl done on the day of Jumu'ah is sunnah to do, but it's not because we are in the state of major impurity. Rather, it's because the Prophet instructed us as a sunnah, perform ghusl before the Jumu'ah, before you come to Jumu'ah. Whereas the ghusl that is done on major impurity, it's something that we have to do. Without it, no salah is accepted. Our ibad is not accepted. We must do the ghusl, and that will remove the major impurity from us, and then we will be pure again. But the ghusl done on the day of Jumu'ah, we are not in the state of impurity. It's just something that the Messenger ﷺ tells us to do because we want to be in the freshest state possible, in the cleanest state possible. No. Yeah. Uh-huh. So the ghusl, when we discuss the next week, you will see that wudu is in ghusl as well. So performing ghusl, this is why I clarified this as well. People think after I perform ghusl, I need to do wudu again. You only need to do that if after you perform ghusl, you broke your wudu. For example, you use the toilet or you passed wind or anything else that requires wudu. But when we perform ghusl, we are already in the state of wudu, so long as you do ghusl correctly. Does that answer the question? Any other questions? Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanakallah wa bihamdihi, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.